Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of the Mythilosophy podcast. On this week's episode, we have a very lovely guy on called Ed Moores. We met in Vietnam when Demelza, myself, and Jackie went out to Vietnam for a little bit. And Jackie ended up meeting Ed, and they now have a lovely house in Newcastle and have a lovely life together up there. And yeah, they came down to visit Froome maybe a couple of months ago now, and so yeah, we just sat down and had a little chat. Ed's got a very interesting upbringing and perspective on that, because he I think for 2 or 3 years spent a bit of time living in various parts of Asia. So yeah, we talk about all that kind of involves and that envelops. Adjusting to different cultures, going from this one to China, and just everything around that really. And then we drift into talking about different Asian countries and travelling and living in an Asian country. And then we also drift into talking about meat and ethics and I think fish as well. So yeah, and it just happens that on the kind of back of this, I've messaged a friend and we're actually going to go fishing. So I'm going to actually get an experience of what it's like to go and do that thing, because I eat quite a lot of it. I find it quite nourishing, and I think you've got to practice what you preach. So yeah, hopefully that's going to happen soon. And yeah, I think that's about it for part 1. The song at the start is by Blazo, and it's a song called Natural Green, and it was chosen by Ed, and it's a really beautiful song. So I hope you enjoy that song and also the chat that we have. So yeah, if you like the podcast, please recommend and rate and share and do all those things. And yeah, I'll let you get into it. So thank you very much. Ed, thank you for joining.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for having
coming
me.
on the podcast, man.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I love the little intro. It's a pleasure having me. Thanks for being here. It's all great, all lovely. Yeah. Where did we meet?
Where did we meet? We met in Vietnam. So I met Jack for the first time.
Yeah.
And we met the day following. We met at your apartment. You and Dee were just hanging out in the early mornings, just seeing what was going on. It was my 6th day in Vietnam, so I was new to the whole thing. Hadn't even got on a scooter yet. It was all completely new. And yeah, so then we met, and it was actually the day before you were due to come home.
Yeah, right. It was quite early, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys had been there for, I think it was a month or so.
Yeah.
And I just arrived. So I met you guys just before we were about to go home, and we went for lunch, went for the vegan buffet, just off Dang Tang Mai, and went and had a nice lunch together, literally the day before you went home. So it was a very transient time for you guys, about to head back to the UK when I'd just arrived. So it was all fresh for me and kind of not expired for you. But
Vietnam didn't really capture our imagination. It didn't really Vietnam, Hanoi didn't. Hanoi wasn't...
Yeah, I must say that for Vietnam and a lot of Southeast Asian countries, like the cities aren't where you want to be if you really want to explore Southeast Asia. If you really want to see like the beauty of these countries, like you need to get yourself into the countryside and don't stay in the big cities, because ultimately, wherever you are in the world, a big city is a big city. It's a concrete jungle. It's the mad pace of life, and it doesn't show the beauty of that culture and that country. And
it just doesn't give a true reflection of the beauty of Vietnam, because I traveled Vietnam before and saw those like more secluded kind of cities, and they were much more beautiful than this like
massively smoggy kind of flipping megalopolis that Hanoi is, or that we could perceive it to be.
Well, it's the same as everywhere. Like look at Ireland as a great example, right? So 2/3 of the people that live in Ireland live in Dublin. And Dublin is, don't get me wrong, a lovely city, but it's very much a city. It's a concrete jungle. It's the mad pace of life like you find in London. But you step half an hour out and you're in the beautiful rolling hills.
Yeah, right.
It's exactly the same for any major country that where a massive population flock to these big cities. It's going to have the same sort of feel, the same sort of vibe. So I think when you go out of that, you really get to see the beauty of the country for what it is.
How long were you in Hanoi after that?
So I was in Hanoi for, I think it was about 8.5 months in total. So we're in Hanoi, living, working, teaching for about 8.5 months. And then we decided to go off, do a little bit of traveling before we came home. So
Were you teaching English?
I was teaching English. Probably the hardest job I've ever done.
Really?
Yeah, like it was like, so it took me about 2 months to step into the classroom. Jack actually kind of dragged me into teaching in the orphanage she was volunteering at. Because I you know what, I felt kind of guilty because I did a online TEFL, which doesn't really give you all the skills that you need to go in and actually like help a classroom out in the right way that it deserves. And they're paying you quite a lot of money to actually go out and sort of $25 an hour in some instances to go and teach these kids English. And I felt like an imposter at times. So going into an orphanage where it was completely voluntary was a great way to get started, because I got over that fear barrier of actually like dealing with kids and teaching them English, but didn't feel the responsibility because it was all voluntary. I didn't feel like I not owed them something, but I wasn't being paid to do something that I'm not qualified to do as such.
Okay. So that experience in the orphanage kind of eased you into sort of working with kids and being around them and knowing how to be around them. Is that?
Yeah, maybe? I mean, I'd had some experience previously working with kids. I worked on holiday parks for about 3, 4, 5 years, and naturally, when you're working in kids clubs and stuff, well, supervising them, you kind of understand how kids work and all that. But when you're dealing with ones that barely speak English, it's a different story altogether. But going to the orphanage is a really good way to ease me in, because there was no expectations. It was more about just spending time with the kids and exposing them to the English language. So that was really good. And then after that, I kind of looked for cover work and got a bit more confident with it. Got a few tools, a few games, a few things in my back pocket that I could bring into the classroom and kind of use on a fairly regular basis to make sure that the kids got what they needed.
Did it get easier as time went on? And did it get easier? And also, would you recommend somebody doing it if they're a bit stuck and not knowing what to do? Is it something that you would recommend for people to do, or was it too harrowing, or what do you think?
So I definitely think it got easier. I think that comes with confidence, which I think anything gets easier with confidence. The more you do it. So for me, confidence is a combination of belief and practice. If you believe that you can do it and you practice it, ultimately you get more confident as a result of that. And I think doing it more, you get more confident with it naturally. But I do think it's a good thing to do. And I do think standing up in front of a classroom of kids that don't speak a word of English is something that everyone should try if they are in a bit of a pickle and looking for a way to just try something completely different. Because
daunting, isn't it?
It's really daunting. So like, I've done loads of public speaking and I've done loads of jobs where you're up in front of a crowd, and that's one thing when you're conversing in your native tongue, but when you're speaking to people that struggle to understand it at the best of times, it's another thing entirely. And it's also kind of exposing when you're at the front, trying to impart your knowledge amongst kids that are eager to learn for the most part. You kind of have to bear it all and kind of show what you can. And so I would say it's definitely worth a try. I wouldn't say it's for everyone.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. But I do think there's definitely you can learn a lot from it, even about yourself. So a lot of people who go travel in Southeast Asia or these places, they'll be doing their job back in their native country. So it might be an office job, might be working hospitality, might be doing something along those lines. But then going out to do something that's completely out of your comfort zone, completely different to what you even could ever do back in your home country, it really gives you a good insight to what people go through in both the teachers in the home country go through, but also what it teaches you about yourself, and that this is what you're actually able to do and how it makes you feel and how it makes you react and how you plan for it.
Yeah, interesting. Because that wasn't your first experience in Asia, was it? Because you grew up there for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, so when I was 9 years old, my dad got the opportunity to move myself and my mum over to Shanghai. So I remember I was sitting in the bath at 8 years old. Mum comes in.
This is
and
in
says,
Newcastle, yeah.
Yeah, up in
Okay.
Newcastle. Yeah, well, just outside of Northumberland. Just normal kid, grew up in the countryside, and then 8 years old. I'm sitting in the bathtub. Mum goes, "So, how do you feel about moving to China?" And I'm like, "Why not?" Little 8-year-old me says, "Yeah, why not?"
That's quite a just initially that's quite a brave thing to do, because for most kids that'd be like, oh Jesus Christ, like what about friends, what about being uprooted, like that's like crazy.
Yeah,
But-
yeah. I'm proud of little me
Yeah,
for
well done.
saying
Yeah,
why
yeah,
not.
right.
And then 2 weeks later, we were bags packed on a plane.
Wow.
Yeah, really quick turnaround. So after we found out we were going, a week later we flew to Jakarta.
Was it just on that initial journey? Was it all excitement, or was it a bit of nervousness? Do you remember at all?
Yeah,
or-
it was complete excitement.
Really?
Like, I was ready to go. Like, as
wow.
soon as I found out we were going, I was like, right. I remember when we were actually leaving. So we were getting on our flight to actually move out there, and I remember we were at the gate, and all our family and friends are around us, like all really upset because we're leaving, traveling like thousands of miles away. And me and my dad had already flown out because he had to be out there for business, and Mum and I were flying out, and we turned around from the gate saying goodbye to all friends and family, and I just turned to Mum and said, "Can I be excited now?" Because I was so keen to go, and everyone was so sad to see us leave. And I'm just like, "No, this is my adventure. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's enjoy it." And yeah, so it was just excitement, and it was nothing like I imagined. Obviously, a little 8-year-old's head, when you're thinking of China, you're thinking of dragons and red, all the Chinese symbols, and just like all the flower festivals and stuff like that. But then, as we talk about concrete jungles, moving to Shanghai is that in its entirety. So
Because you went from sort of like country living to
oh yeah, so my hometown of Morpeth has a population of about 10,000 people, and that includes not just the town itself, but like surrounding villages. And then we moved to Shanghai, that at the time had a registered population of 24 million.
whoa.
Yeah, so
That's
about
some jump, eh?
half the population of the UK in one city. So it's a big place. It's a big place. So went out there for a visit to go see what schools we're going to go to, where we're going to live, and then we took the jump over and just moved out there.
What was your initial experience when you landed in Shanghai? What was your initial like? Was it like Jesus Christ, or was it like ooh?
So when we got there, we got shown around by one of Dad's colleagues, who was like native to Shanghai, but perfect English language, worked for Suez, the company he was working for, and showed us around. Showed us all these weird and wonderful places, but for me, it was more intrigue than anything else. I've never been a shy kid. I've always asked the why, and I've never been one to sort of shy away from like wanting to understand more. So going into this place that just seemed so not alien, because at 8 you don't really know a whole lot anyway, but going to a place that just seems so different to what you're used to a place where there's more sheep than people, to a place where you can't go 10 foot without seeing a crowd of people. So it was more just wanting to learn more about it, see more about it, and just kind of get involved.
I feel like people, kids especially, to have something like that completely transforms what you know as a reality in a society, that completely just like takes all that you know and goes, actually, nah, there's something else. So you know, there's like a 10,000 population thing, there's country living, and then also there's a big humongous, you know, city living. To give a child that experience, that like difference of like, you know, showing that there are different ways people do things, and different culture as well. I think must have been an amazing experience for young Ed. And yeah.
It was fantastic. So so we moved to like an expat community. So it's like gated fences, gated walls, like security guards and all doors.
Dave on security, or
No. All right, Dave. No. No. So we lived in this gated community, and literally there was people from all over the world. So my best friend when I first got there, his name was Peter from Belgium. Then I had a friend from Texas. I had a friend from Australia, a friend from New Zealand, friends
Wow.
from Korea and Malaysia and Nigeria,
Jesus.
and literally like I knew 2 other English people.
cultural overload. That's amazing.
Literally. So you're going into this place where, and the same for my school. It was an American school, so Shanghai American school, and you had to have a non-Chinese passport in order to attend, just as part of the international school regulations they had there. and it's just people from all over the world. And you had these days where it was like culture days, where people would bring in like traditional dress from where they lived, to bring in traditional food.
Wow.
And you'd get to just like have bits of all these different cultures that have all kind of conglomerated in this one place, and being able to expose not just to the Chinese culture, because you're immersed in it, you're living in it, you're learning the language, you're tasting the food, you're doing all that, but learning from your peers what their cultures are like and what they've brought with them to share with other people and understand what it's like. I mean, just an example. We're bringing in food for like a buffet for everyone to try, like everyone's native culture, and I brought in Yorkshire puddings, as you do. Right? Like, do you know what else you bring? I'm not bringing in fish and chips. Like, bringing Yorkshire puddings for everyone to try. And when we're going through the menu, they'd put it in dessert.
Hilarious.
Yeah, because it's Yorkshire pudding.
Hilarious.
So it just goes to show how like what we take for granted in terms of
Yeah.
like culture and what we just assume everybody knows, when you take it into like an international setting,
Yeah.
it's just another story altogether.
Do you know? Dee and I were in Australia, working on this like cattle farm, and we actually, funny enough, we did the same thing. We did like Dee and I had this like takeover of like the kids for the evening. And we were like, what can we cook they might like? And we were like, oh, Yorkshire puddings, that's a good idea. And we were like, the kids might like these, so we were like, guys, fancy trying some Yorkshire puddings? And they were like, what? As in like York and like for pudding? And we were like, no. So it's not a pudding, but it's like it goes with your main, and it's like basically like a pancake. And they were like, right, so it's not a pudding. And we were like, no, it's just called a Yorkshire pudding. And we're like, okay, we'll give it a go. And then they like came back the next day, telling their mum and dad. They were like, Mum, Dad, Dee and Ryan cooked us these amazing York how the hell did you say it again? Yorkshire? Yorkshire puddings.
Best things we think is every day. But yeah, it's funny when you take it into the global standpoint.
Yeah. So how long were you in Shanghai for?
So I was in Shanghai for a total of 3 years.
So from 8 to 11. Okay.
It was 9 to 12.
Right.
We moved over there just before I turned 9. And then we moved to Hong Kong shortly after.
Wow,
So
okay.
we moved 3 years in Hong Kong. Sorry, 3 years in Shanghai, then 2 years in Hong Kong, and which is a completely different place altogether. So Shanghai is, from what you would imagine, it's... Sorry.
What years were these as well? Just out of interest.
So it was 2002 when we moved
Okay.
to Shanghai.
Yeah.
Then 2005 we moved to Hong Kong.
Okay, cool.
Then moved back to the UK in 2007.
Right.
So Shanghai was more as you'd think like rural China, but obviously in a massive city. But you go into like the markets and it's like, right, there's like dogs strung up. There's people cooking all sorts of food on the side. There's people chopping up frogs. There's like literally the immersion of Chinese culture brought from all over. You'd go into a little restaurant, sit on a tiny little plastic stool and get fed some food that you'd try to read off the menu, but just when you try to pronounce it, people just look at you kind of funny. And then you go to Hong Kong, which is only way I can describe it is a very warm Britain.
Okay, interesting.
because
Because it has its old. It was an old British colony.
Yeah, so in 1987, we went over there with all of our warships and said, we're going to have this for 100 years. And that's exactly what we did. And then we gave it back in 1997.
Right.
So it's got so much Western influence. It's got the most millionaires per capita in the world, does Hong Kong.
Really?
Yeah. It's a really affluent place. But, well, parts of it are really affluent, but then other parts are really not so. So there's very much two sides to Hong Kong, depending on where you are and who you are. So that was interesting in itself. And obviously being an expat, you spend more time on one half of it than you do the other.
It'd be interesting actually for you to chat to our friend Jess, because she's from Hong Kong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's got family over there.
Oh, yeah, it'd be really interesting. Wonder whereabouts. But yeah, so that'd be really, really cool to do. But yeah, so Hong Kong was a lot of a different, more experience. It was in China. So where we lived in Shanghai, we lived, as I say, in like a gated wall community, and there was like tennis courts and swimming pools and jacuzzis, and lived in the kind of complex where you could go to the bar and say your room number and it would get charged to the room rather than having to like pay cash or anything. So it was literally like the lap of luxury. And that was like all provided for by the company. School was paid for by the company. Health insurance, everything was provided for us. Then when you go to Hong Kong, you get a similar package, but what you can get for your money there compared to Shanghai was like not like, I'd say that maybe 10%. Like you couldn't live the same sort of lifestyle, which is absolutely fine, but it just goes to show that you can travel like an hour and a half on a plane and still technically be in China, but the difference in terms of what like the purchasing power parity people have is insane. So it was really interesting to see the contrast between the two places. I personally much preferred Shanghai as a place to live, as a place to grow up. So going through the markets and bartering in Mandarin and talking to the local people, and you were really, really welcomed as a Westerner. Like really, really welcomed. Like you go over there, you walk into anywhere, and everyone talks to you like the best friend. And
Oh wow.
because for a lot of China, because 86% of their GDP is made up of exports,
Right.
so they export everything to the West. Like America, us, the EU are massive consumers of everything they make, generally electronics. And so all these really big businesses have gone to China, made factories, made thousands and thousands of jobs for all these Chinese people. So when they see you come over here, like, because you're obviously helping their business out to export all their goods over to us, it means that it's kind of, you're kind of feeding the prosperity a little bit.
Interesting.
So they're really welcoming, really friendly. They'd want you to, like, they'd give you the last, like, the shirt off the back if they could. And when you go over there, you learn the language and you try and engage with them. They're really, really receptive of it, and they really, really like it. So that was really, really nice.
Yeah. How hard is Mandarin to learn? Or do you know Mandarin now? Do you know?
我说一点点的普通话, which
Okay.
means I speak a little bit Mandarin.
Okay.
I would say I'm really, really rusty. I haven't used it in like since GCSE.
Right.
And I would say I know enough to get myself into trouble, but not enough to get myself out. So Mandarin is a tough language to learn.
Really?
So there's 4 tones, and each word. So the thing about Mandarin, speaking it's one thing, but writing it's another. So in England, they say that the average 6-year-old can read the front of a newspaper because the word's fairly simple. You can kind of spell out a word as you read it. But in Mandarin, the average 11-year-old can't.
Right.
Because there's no way of being able to spell out a word as you look at the character. You have to just know what that character is. You have to have previously learned that to be able to read it, which makes it really challenging. What I do love about Mandarin, though, one of my favorite things is it's all very pictorial. So, for example, when you draw the word for fire, which is ho, it's 2 sticks with 2 little dashes coming off, so it kind of looks like a fire.
Right. Okay.
You've got the moon and sun. The sun is a box, and the moon is a box with a line through it.
Ah, there we go.
The word for trouble is 2 women under one roof. Like,
Really?
yeah, genuinely. So it all kind of tells a story as to why the
Yes.
character is the character,
Yes.
which is really, really interesting, and it all comes back from thousands of years ago. So it's all kind of really interesting to see.
How did coming back to Newcastle? How did you find that adaptation?
I really struggled.
Really?
Really struggled. So obviously, when I was in Asia, it was all private schools. The education was second to none. I was learning about ions and atoms when I was 11. So I was like learning really advanced stuff, and I came back to just like, it was a really good school that I came back to in Northumberland, but I really, really struggled because it was such a different way of life out there, and obviously I missed all my friends and all that. So yeah, I kind of struggled coming back and assimilating, because I'd lived such a different life, and everything just seemed so normal, for lack of a better term. I was used to the whole transient thing of like leaving people behind, because when people go off, when you say, for example, living in Shanghai, my best friend Peter that I first moved out there and saw, he moved within 6 weeks of me getting there.
Right.
Didn't really have any friends for a couple of months, and then I found other friends. So I'm used to the transient nature of it, and sort of saying goodbye to people and saying have a nice life, and knowing it's probably the last time you're going to speak to them.
Oh,
So it's the days before social media really are taking hold. So saying goodbye to someone and knowing it's maybe the last time you're actually going to see them when you're a kid is quite humbling. So I was kind of okay with saying goodbye to all my friends in Hong Kong, because I've been through all that a couple of times.
Right.
Moved back into the same house in Newcastle in Morpeth that we left, on the same street with all the same friends. No one had left. Everyone was still there. So I kind of reconnected with a lot of my friends who I was friends with up to the age of 9, which was great. But everyone had changed so much, and obviously when you're only in your own head, in your head you haven't changed, right? You just grow up and you are you, and you always will be, and then you come back, and when you haven't seen people for 5 years, and between the ages of 9 and 14 are really formative, you kind of become yourself in that period of time. So coming back to seeing people and how they develop and how they change when you hadn't been in touch with these people, apart from the time you popped home like every couple of years to see them for an afternoon or whatever. It was kind of I didn't reconnect with all the same people. I kind of made a new group of friends when I came back. But yeah, that first year when I came back was really tough. It was really tough.
Okay. And then going on from there, you obviously went through school, and then you did a bit of like the holiday park. Was there something between you and the holiday parks and Hanoi, or?
So what I did was I obviously went to school. I went to uni. Did a couple different things at uni, and then finished my degree. And when I was working,
Oh, you studied computers.
I did computer science at Newcastle for a year. Realized I didn't want to code for the rest of my life. Didn't want to sit behind a screen. I enjoyed people too much.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I went and did a communications degree at Northumbria after my first year. Did really well at that, got 2-1, and then basically while I was working there, I worked at Parkdean Holidays, which was round the corner, down the road. Just worked in the contact centre selling holidays, 16 hours a week. Really enjoyed the ethos of the business, really liked what they did, love holiday parks, it's all really good fun. And so then I applied for their graduate scheme after I graduated, got onto that. And then when I was doing holiday parks, I moved around the country every 3 months. So I was what they called a firefighter manager. So, for example, when I was in the Northeast, and they said, right, okay, we've got a maintenance team that have an issue down in Dorset. Can you move down to Dorset to Poole and spend 3 months sorting out their processes, understand what's going wrong, and try and streamline it? You go, yeah, not a problem. Move down there, live in a caravan, spend 3 months.
So you've always kind of moved about and dotted about, and yeah.
Yeah, so basically from the age of 9, I lived in Shanghai, then Hong Kong, came back, lived with my parents until I went to uni, moved into Newcastle. Obviously, at uni, you change house every year. Then I went to the holiday parks, moved around every 3-4 months. And then I left the holiday parks and went to Vietnam. And yeah, and then obviously now we're here we are today, a couple of years later. But,
Yeah, right.
so yeah, I've always been kind of transient, never really settled down some solid roots anywhere until fairly recently.
Well, yeah, you've bought a house, haven't you, and stuff. And
Yeah. Bought a house up in Newcastle, which is great. Like, absolutely love being a homeowner. I feel very adult. A scary thought, think you got this massive debt over your head, but you know what? It's really nice to actually settle down and have a bit of roots and somewhere to call home that isn't just going to up and leave or isn't going to up and go. But back to the holiday parks, it was kind of last minute when I found out I was going to move. So there's one lady that I used to work with in HR, and if my phone would ring and I saw her name come up on the screen, I know that I'd be moving within the next 24 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I remember...
Oh, that must have been unsettling.
Yeah, really tough. So, like, you'd really start to... So, 3 months isn't very long. So, first month, you're literally just finding your feet, understanding where you are. So, just in the grand scheme of things, so in 18 months, I moved from the northeast down to Dorset over to Portsmouth up to Yorkshire up to Scotland down to Essex over to Wales to the northeast in 18 months.
Jesus.
So yeah,
You've seen a lot of the country then, eh?
Yeah, all the coast. It's beautiful, lovely place to be. Like,
Oh, there's that amazing thing you said. That amazing fact.
Yeah, so I've never lived further than 5 miles from a beach apart from when I was in Hanoi.
That is just
Like-
unbloody real.
Yeah, really nice place to be. I mean, the beach in Shanghai wasn't great, wouldn't recommend it, but
Just to be in the sea though, and just seeing the horizon, getting all the fresh air. I mean,
yeah, and you know what? I never really realized how much I missed it until I was in Hanoi.
oh, interesting.
You kind of take it for granted. So like there'd be years where I didn't go to the beach for like 18 months, 2 years because it's like, oh, it's just the beach, just there. But then when you're away from it, you're like, you know what? I really miss it. I really miss just hearing the crashing of the waves and the salty air and the getting blown in the face by the wind. And yeah, so it's I love the fact that I've always been a bit of a water baby and really close to it all.
And fresh fish as well. And
Oh, all that fresh fish, man. You can't go wrong.
it's good for everything, isn't it? Brains, taste,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. I've just recently gone onto this ketogenic diet.
Oh yeah.
Which is yeah. I mean again, I'm only in it for 5 days, but the fact because I came back from being veggie, and then now I'm eating meat again and fish and stuff. But just having that bit of fish is that I've had so far I've had lamb, I've had steak, I've had fish, and chicken, and the one where I just feel nourished, I just feel completely and utterly like that did me some real good was eating fish.
Do you know what I must say? Like for eating fish, I've always said for the keto diet and other diets when it comes to fish, like the oils that you get from that, like it automatically just makes you feel like lubricated, like a well-oiled machine. Having that oil just flow through your body, you just kind of feel like, right, this is how it's meant to be. This is how it's meant to.
I
It's
agree.
meant to function.
Yeah, it feels very, very natural. Just having that down my gullet, and then
Did you ever miss it when you were veggie?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, fish was the only thing that I severely missed. Yeah, absolutely.
So what was it that kept you away from it?
From fish.
Yeah.
So I think initially it was the way that fish were kept, you know, so like or the way they were caught and the byproducts of like catching this fish. But then I was talking. I spoke to this autistic 15-year-old who used to go to the school that I worked in, and he essentially said that like fishes were basically like swimming computers. Like they weren't swimming around all day worrying about if I'm going to get eaten or this or that or that. They were just swimming about, and then if danger was upon them, they'd be like, oh, danger, cool. And then 3 seconds later, the danger would go, and they forget about it and just swim along. So he was almost like, yeah, semi convinced that he wasn't, in terms of like harm reduction and what like an animal can do and what they are and what they're all like, so cows and organs and things, he was a bit not sure about that. But yeah, so that sort of way of thinking kind of got me back to like, okay, maybe it isn't so bad. And just honestly how it actually makes me feel when I eat fish, I just feel nourished like all the way through. But yeah, there were some issues around how fish were caught and the whole fishing industry, because that is a dire state of the world. Like so for example, I think there's only 15 species left of seahorses in the world because of the big, massive like trawler fishing that goes on in the oceans,
Wow,
which
okay.
is really sad. And
Yeah.
you know, turtles and all these like amazing, all this amazing marine life get like caught up in these big trawler nets. So, yeah, trying to be kind of conscious and just like, you know, maybe think a bit more about where it came from and, you know, where it was grown up or where it was reared, if you like.
So it's a really interesting thing about fish that a friend of mine does. So a friend of mine used to work in a fishing tackle shop, and he always said the only meat I'd ever eat would be stuff that I like caught or stuff that I hunted or things like that. Now what he did was he used to go on 2 fishing trips a year. He'd go one sort of the start of the year, one sort of the end of the year, and he had a massive chest freezer in his garage.
Freezer's the key, yeah.
He'd freeze it, so he'd go out and he'd catch an absolute trawl of fish. He'd catch absolutely loads, stick it in the ice box right next to him, and then he'd freeze it. And anytime he felt like he wanted fish, like you catch a 6-pound rainbow trout, that's going to feed you like for 8 times throughout the day, or 8 times throughout how often you fillet it.
Yeah.
And it just kept on going. The fact he did it twice a year, he knew that it got caught from this lake, this reservoir, and it grew up there, and it had a comfortable life. And as you say, back to the fish computers piece, it's always a very stereotype that fish only have memory of like 6 seconds or something along those lines. So he knows that, yeah, the fish might have panicked for 6 seconds, but ultimately it's gone to nourish him and feed him over a period of time, and he's done it all himself. So for fish, for example, like I know that with animals, if they're really stressed before you butcher them, it affects the taste of the meat or the cortisone going through that. The same thing doesn't happen for fish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so fish flesh doesn't have the same reaction when they get stressed because, as you say, they're only stressed for a few seconds, and it doesn't impact them in the same way. So I don't know whether that kind of would be sort of like a solace to take in, that it's not actually going to impact them in their mental state or anything like that, if fish can be considered to have a mental state.
Ah, yeah. Fish philosophy.
Fish philosophy. Philosophy.
Philosophy. Yeah, it's tricky. I still there are still kind of parts of me that, like I was on a walk the other day, just like mulling over in my head about this whole ketogenic thing, because it is very meat based, which I'm come to terms with, and yeah, I was kind of thinking about the whole like cow thing, because you know they in terms of sentient beings and in terms of their makeup and their like, you know, organs and things, like they are close-ish to, you know, us, and they do feel, you can see they feel fear, you can see that contemplates them. So I'm still kind of come to terms with that. But we've got a local butcher down the road who I spoke to, I wanted to get the meat, and he's kind of reassured me that, you know, that like it's all good, you know, locally sourced meat, and that, you know, I give them massages and, you know, nice little like thing to read as they're, no, I'm joking.
On that note,
yeah.
have you ever tried Kobe beef?
Kobe is a Japanese beef, isn't it?
Yeah, the ones that are massaged and are
Oh.
looked after. So it's extortionately expensive.
Right.
But these cows are just pampered their entire life. They're massaged. They're taken on lovely walks like throughout the Japanese countryside. And
Really?
yeah, so they literally, if you do a bit of research into these cows, they literally live the life of Larry, and then they played very classical music when they're slaughtered, and like literally they give it as much ease as they
Really?
can. They let it live for as long as it can, so it gets all the nourishment of all this like delicious food. They eat better than we do, and so yeah. So if you did want to try sort of see what the beef is like if it has been nurtured in
Right.
such a way, there is that option out there. Might have to get a mortgage for it,
But I mean that would highly affect the quality of the meat, wouldn't it? If this like cow is having a lovely life and it's really looked after, and then the classical music as you go in.
yeah. So
Put the Beethoven, come on.
so I remember when I was working on the holiday parks, I looked after one of the restaurants, and I won this incentive to go to a. I mean, so it doesn't sound like a reward. We went to an abattoir where we got to see where all the meat came from that we were actually serving on the holiday parks. And
Good.
it was through one of the big companies in the UK that serves a massive number of all the chains. And we got to go to the abattoir and see how it's all done. And do you know what? Like, I genuinely thought, because the meat we get's fairly cheap, or got was fairly cheap, and it was a massive conglomerate and all that sort of stuff, I thought it was going to be pretty horrendous conditions, and I really wasn't looking forward to it. My granddad's a butcher, so I kind of gotten used to all that anyway. But I wasn't looking forward to it. But actually seeing the process that they take the animals through is, so there's only one animal in the room at a time when they go through the slaughterhouse, and they had loads of screens and blinds so they couldn't see what was going to happen, and they put like nice music on for the cows when they were going through. So it did try and reduce the stress the animals feeling beforehand. But we never saw the conditions of what the cows were being kept in before they got to that point,
Yeah.
which is the bit that concerns me more than anything. But going through to the actual point of exit, you could say, was like actually fairly nicely done. But it's what happens before that is really where sort of the terror might lie, so to speak.
Yeah, indeed. I think it's something that I think yeah, we're just. I think the way that society's gone. I think we're just very removed from where our food comes from, and you know the life it's led to get to your plate and your belly. You know what I mean? So
So really interesting on that, actually. I watched a documentary on the ketogenic diet because I started that a few months ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it when I was on it. But I remember watching a documentary where there was a family that were going on the ketogenic diet for health reasons, and it had massive benefits. But the takeaway I got from it was, because it's quite expensive to get all like this natural, organic, free range meat on a regular basis for a family of four, it can cost quite a lot. They decided to buy a cow, get it butchered, and
Yeah.
freeze it and use it that way. But the bit that stuck with me was they bought this cow on this farm, and before it got butchered, they went to go and visit this cow. So they went, they saw it, they spent the afternoon with it, they named it. About a week before it was due to go to the slaughterhouse. Now, they had two young kids. I think they were like 8 and 4. And it's a really interesting way of educating the kids of, this is where the meat actually comes from. It's not just,
great.
you don't just buy it in a packet at a supermarket as meat and that's what it is. This is where it comes from, which I think is really interesting.
having a relationship to your food, I think, is vital. Absolutely key.
Question, have you ever killed anything and cooked it?
No, actually, no.
You haven't?
No.
No.
And I believe me, so coming back onto this like diet, it's one of the things that I intend to do very, very soon, because I don't so again, part of the reason why I went veg in the first place was because I didn't feel that I could actually properly go and kill something and do that, and so I didn't feel I had the moral duty or moral right to be eating meat if I couldn't do it. So the fact I've now started back on meat again, I fully intend to, you know, even if it is just a fish, because I feel semi comfortable with that. I'd be quite intrigued to do that.
Yeah, I definitely think fish is a good way to start, because
Yeah.
it is. A lot of the animals that we do eat, generally speaking, like we do form a kind of connection with, like, beforehand. So, but fish, what tends to be a little bit more removed, because we don't see them in everyday life, because we don't tend to go swimming underwater every day where we see these fish. But you can go across a farm and see a pig. You can you can
Interesting.
walk past a field and see a cow. You can see sheep when you're driving down a road. You kind of form an everyday connection with it. Whereas with fish, because they're not as visible to us, you probably don't have the same connection to it.
Yeah, right.
So it's, and obviously the 6 seconds thing that we talked about of memory, it's probably easier to feel like you can do that. And like I've had experiences of, I've caught loads of fish, filleted, gutted, cooked on a barbecue there and then, done with rabbits a couple of times. But I do know what you're saying with sort of other animals, how Do I feel like I would be able to slaughter a pig and eat it? I don't know. I've never been put in that situation, nor would I want to put myself in that situation. Do I feel like I shouldn't eat the pig because of it? Probably not. I feel like I'm quite happy to do so because, well, I don't know why. Just because I feel like it's. I think the fact my granddad was a butcher kind of helps because he's kind of ingrained that meat is you have meat, eat meat. Lovely man, and he loves pigs. Like literally, honestly, if you saw his house, he's got ornaments of pigs absolutely everywhere, and he's a butcher. It's kind of a little bit odd, but he loves them. He adores them. He's like adopted pigs on farms and stuff, and like it's really really nice. And even though he's a butcher, which kind of shows that he likes both sides of it rather than just the meat element of it.
I think the sun's on my side today. I got a lease of life, I feel okay. Need to call around, get them all out, jump in the car and get on the way. Cause there's love and there's strength in numbers. They can try but they're never gonna run us down. Speakers loud, it's like we're on a come up. Fifth gear but they're never gonna race us down. I'm alive on a high, blue skies, there's nothing better. Hands up, we're on a ride, hold tight, we're laughing together. Ooh, we'll light it up and ooh, we can't be stopped and oh, can't hear us coming. Oh, we take off and keep it running. Keep it running. Oh. Take a stop at the riverside, crack 'em open, pass around the light. Breathe it in and out, bring our guards down. Yeah, this is ours for the day and the night. Cause there's love and there's strength in numbers. They can try, but they're never gonna run us down. Speakers loud, it's like we're on a come up. Fifth gear, but they're never gonna race us down. I'm alive on a high, blue skies, there's nothing better. Hands up, we're on a ride, hold tight, we're laughing together. Ooh, we'll light it up and ooh, we can't be stopped and oh, you can't hear us coming. Oh, we take off and keep it running, running. We take off and keep it running.